I never thought the day I'd say goodbye to my son would also be the day someone tried to erase me from his life. Even now, as I sit here talking to you, my hands still shake remembering the moment that shattered the little strength I had left. You know, grief does something strange to a mother. It doesn't just break her heart, it rearranges her soul. And mine feels like it was torn apart in front of a room full of people who pretended not to see. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I was a mother who loved her son more than breath itself. And on that cold, bitter Sunday morning, when the church bells rang for his funeral, I could swear the sound split my chest open. Every step toward his casket felt like wading through wet cement. My knees trembled. My throat burned. My eyes were swollen from nights without sleep. And yet, I held myself together because that's what mothers do. We stand when the world expects us to fall. But she, my daughter-in-law, she didn't even let me have that. I remember her walking toward me, her black dress swaying, her eyes dry, too dry for a grieving widow. She didn't look broken. She didn't look devastated. She looked annoyed. Like my tears were an inconvenience. Like my pain was something she wanted to sweep under a rug and forget. When she leaned in close, I thought she was coming to comfort me. I was wrong. Her voice was a whisper, but each word sliced through me like a blade. Stop crying. Pack your things and leave. Today. For a moment I couldn't breathe. I stared at her, stunned, thinking maybe grief had warped my hearing. But then she pulled back, her lips tight, her eyes cold, and I knew she meant it. She wanted me gone. From the house. From the family. From my son's story. As if I had never existed. And the worst part? I still don't know why. I stood there frozen as mourners walked around me, offering hugs, condolences, gentle words. None of them knew what she'd whispered. None of them saw the storm rising inside me. All they saw was a grieving mother holding a folded flag and a bouquet her hands couldn't stop trembling around. I looked at my son's picture, his smile, the one he got from me, and a thought hit me so hard I almost dropped the flowers. Did he know? Did my boy know what kind of woman he married? Did he know what she was capable of? Did he know she would throw me out on the very day we laid him to rest? That thought cracked something inside me. You might wonder why I didn't confront her right there in front of the whole room. Why I didn't shout. Why I didn't demand answers. But you have to understand, in that moment I was fighting to stay upright. I was fighting for air. I was fighting not to collapse next to that casket and beg God to take me too. I tried to walk away, to steady myself, to breathe, but grief has a way of ambushing you. And when the pastor said we were ready to begin, I barely made it to my seat. The ceremony passed like a blur. The prayers, the speeches, the soft music, the memories shared by friends who knew only little pieces of the man I raised. But I remember the moment they closed the casket. My legs buckled. My body leaned forward like it wanted to throw itself onto the wood. A soft cry escaped me. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet plea from a mother losing her whole world. And that's when she did it again. A hand grabbed my arm tight, forceful, and she hissed, "Stop making a scene. You're embarrassing me." Embarrassing her. Me. A grieving mother. For a moment the room spun. I stared at her face, searching for something human, something soft, something real. But there was nothing. Not a single crack in her cold expression. And right then, something inside me shifted. I realized I was not just dealing with grief, I was dealing with a secret. A dark one. A cruel one. One my son might have taken to his grave. And you know what's strange? When a truth is buried deep, sometimes death shakes the ground just enough to bring it to the surface. Let me ask you something, and think about this carefully. If someone treated you like this at your child's funeral, would you stay silent? Would you walk away? Or would you try to uncover what they're hiding? Tell me honestly, what would you do? If you want more people to hear this story, just tap the like button. It helps more than you think. When the service ended, she didn't even wait. She walked ahead, collected her things, and climbed into the limousine without looking back. As if I were a problem she had successfully ignored all morning. As if she had already crossed me off her list. But here's where things changed. While I was making my way out of the church, my late son's best friend, Michael, stopped me. His face was pale, his eyes uneasy. He kept glancing toward the limousine like he didn't want her to see him talking to me. "Mrs. Carter," he whispered, "there's something you need to know. About everything. About her." My heart stalled. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely holding steady. He swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. I should have told your son. I should have told you. But now it might be too late. Those words dug into my skin like ice. Too late for what? He looked around again, lowered his voice, and said something that sent chills racing through every vein in my body. She wasn't crying today for a reason. And before he could finish the sentence, she opened the limousine door and called out to him sharply, like she owned him. He stepped back. His face changed. Fear took over. And he walked away. Just like that. Leaving me with a truth he almost revealed. And 100 questions clawing at my chest. But one thing became painfully clear in that moment. My son's death wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. Something she didn't want me to find out. Something she was willing to push me out of the house, out of the family, to keep buried. What she didn't know was that I'm a mother. And a mother doesn't stop digging until she uncovers the truth. Even if the truth destroys her. When I left the church, the winter air slapped against my face so sharply it almost woke me from the nightmare I was living. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that makes the world feel empty. I wrapped my black shawl tighter around my shoulders and stood on the steps for a moment, watching everyone gather in small clusters, whispering, hugging, pretending life would go on after that day. But my life, it had stopped the moment they told me my son wouldn't be coming home again. My daughter-in-law didn't even wait. She was already in the car, tapping her fingers against the window like she was bored, like she had somewhere more important to be. I tried to get in after her, but she locked the door without looking at me. Michael ended up taking my arm gently and helping me into a different car behind them. I didn't say a word during the ride. My tears kept falling silently, the way rain slips down a window when no one is watching. Someone asked me if I needed water, someone else patted my back, but their kindness just made my chest ache more. None of them knew what she'd said to me. None of them understood that I wasn't just crying for my son. I was crying because I was being pushed out of the last piece of him I had left. When we reached the cemetery, I stepped out slowly, feeling the ground swallow my feet. The cold earth, the long row of tombstones, the faint smell of damp soil. Everything felt unreal. Like I was standing in a play I never auditioned for. My daughter-in-law walked ahead, surrounded by people offering condolences. She accepted them with a face so calm, so controlled it made my stomach twist. I kept wondering what Michael had meant. Why she didn't cry. What he almost said before she called him off like a dog. My son's casket was lowered into the ground, and I felt myself swaying. Michael stood beside me, but he didn't say another word, not one. His jaw was tight. His hands trembled. And I knew something was clawing inside him, something he was terrified to speak aloud. As the final prayers ended, people threw handfuls of soil onto the casket. When it was my turn, I knelt down, grabbed the cold earth, and let it slip from my fingers. The sound it made, that soft, hollow thud, broke me all over again. And then out of nowhere, I felt eyes burning into the back of my neck. I turned and saw her standing several feet away, arms crossed, her face twisted into an expression I can only describe as irritation. She wasn't mourning. She wasn't grieving. She was watching me, studying me, as if she didn't want me near that grave, as if she owned him now, even in death. When the ceremony was over, people started leaving. Some hugged me, some whispered prayers, but I barely heard anything. My heart was still at the bottom of that grave. And then she walked up to me finally. But her voice was sharp, angry, so quiet only I could hear it. "I want you gone today," she said. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Harder for her? This woman who never carried him, never raised him, never wiped his tears when he was sick. She was telling me to stop making things hard? I swallowed my words. My grief. My rage. Everything. "Why?" I finally whispered. "Why do you want me out of the house?" Her eyes narrowed. "You don't belong there. I'm his mother. And I'm his wife," she snapped. "That makes my word the only one that matters now." She turned to walk away, but something inside me cracked open and poured out. "What are you hiding?" I asked. She stopped. Her body stiffened. She didn't turn around. But I saw it, the tiniest tremble in her hand. And that was the moment I knew. There was something my son never told me. Something she didn't want me to discover. She walked away without answering, leaving me there with the wind and the empty grave. Michael approached again, pacing nervously. "Mrs. Carter," he began. "Tell me," I said. My voice wasn't trembling anymore. "Tell me the truth about her." He looked down at the ground, his breath heavy. "I promised him I wouldn't," he whispered. "Promised who?" I asked, my throat tightening. "Your son." My blood ran cold. Michael dragged a hand through his hair, shaking his head like he wished he could take the words back. "He told me, if anything ever happened to him, not to tell you." I felt like the world tilted, like I was going to faint. My son kept a secret from me? A secret big enough to make a grown man tremble at a funeral? Why would he say that? I asked, my voice cracking. Michael took a slow breath. "Because he knew you wouldn't be able to handle it." I stared at him, my heart pounding so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. "What wouldn't I be able to handle, Michael? Tell me." He stepped back, shaking his head again. "I can't. Not yet. Not here. She's watching. She always watches." My body froze. I turned, and sure enough, she was standing by the car, staring at us with cold, unblinking eyes. Michael whispered, "Tonight. Meet me at the old cafe downtown. 8 p.m. I'll tell you everything." I took a breath. "I'll be there." "Don't tell her," he warned. "Not even a word." "I won't." He squeezed my shoulder softly, almost apologetically, then walked away. I stood there alone again, feeling the wind cut through my coat, feeling the weight of the promise Michael carried like it was poison. What was so terrible that my son hid it from me? What was so dangerous that Michael was afraid to even speak it at a funeral? And why did my daughter-in-law want me gone before the truth surfaced? When she finally called my name, ordering me into the car, I looked at her and felt something shift inside me. Fear. Suspicion. A mother's instinct sharpening like a blade. She thought she was pushing me out of the story. She didn't know she was pushing me straight into the truth. When we got back to the house, the sky had already darkened, even though it wasn't late. It felt like the world was grieving with me, dimming its light out of respect for the son I'd lost. The house looked different that day, colder, emptier, like my boy's absence had soaked into the walls. His laughter used to fill this place. His footsteps echoed down the hallway every morning. But now it felt like a mausoleum. As soon as we walked inside, she brushed past me without a word. Her heels clicked sharply against the wooden floor. Each step a reminder of how unwelcome I was in my own son's home. She set her purse on the table, then turned toward me with the same cold, rigid expression she'd worn all day. "You have 2 hours," she said. "Pack what's yours and go." I didn't answer. I didn't trust myself to. My grief was still raw, but something else had started to boil beneath it. Anger, suspicion, and a fear I didn't want to name. My legs carried me up the stairs slowly, like they were dragging all the years of memories with them. Every picture on the wall felt like a wound. His baby photos, his graduation, the day he moved into this house. I touched the frames gently, letting my fingers linger on his smiling face. That smile used to make everything okay. In his room, I stood in the doorway for a moment, unable to breathe. His bed was still made. His jacket was draped over the chair. His shoes were neatly lined up beside the closet. Everything exactly the way he left it. I stepped inside, feeling the weight of 100 moments pressing down on my shoulders. For a minute, I wanted to collapse on his bed and let the truth of my new life crush me. But then, I remembered Michael's face at the cemetery, the fear in his eyes, the truth he was carrying. 8 p.m. Old cafe downtown. The thought steadied me. I opened my suitcase slowly and began packing the few belongings I had brought. My hands were trembling so much that a shirt slipped from my fingers. When I knelt to pick it up, something caught my eye under the bed. Something small, metallic, half hidden beneath a box. I leaned forward and grabbed it. A key. Not a house key. Not a car key. A small silver key with a floral engraving on the top. My heart jumped. My son always kept sentimental things close, but I had never seen this key before. I felt its weight, ran my thumb over the cool metal, and immediately knew. This wasn't just a key. It belonged to something important. Something he kept hidden. And something she didn't want me to find. Footsteps sounded in the hallway, and I quickly slipped the key into my pocket. I stood up just before she appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed tightly against her chest. "Need help?" she asked, but her tone said she hoped I would say no. "No," I replied. She watched me for a long moment, her eyes scanning the room like she was checking if something was missing. Then her gaze snapped back to me. "Hurry," she said. "I don't want you here after tonight." She left without waiting for my response. I exhaled slowly, trying to calm the pounding in my chest. Why was she so desperate to get rid of me? Why today of all days? What was she afraid I would find? And why did my son hide a key? I packed the rest of my things quietly, carefully, keeping my hands close to my pocket like I was guarding treasure. When I zipped up the suitcase, I paused and glanced around the room one last time. My son would have wanted me here. He would have wanted me safe. He would have wanted me to know the truth. And that thought alone gave me strength. Downstairs, the atmosphere was thick with tension. She was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone, acting like the day had been nothing more than a minor inconvenience. She didn't look up when I entered the living room. "I'm leaving for a bit," she said casually. "Be gone before I get back." She grabbed her coat, her keys, and left without even glancing at me. The moment the door closed behind her, my knees almost gave out in relief. Her presence felt like poison in the air. And once she was gone, I could breathe again. I sat on the couch for a moment, pulling in shaky breaths, trying to bring myself back into my own body. My phone buzzed. A message from Michael. "Don't be late. And come alone." My stomach tightened. I checked the time. 7:12 p.m. I grabbed my coat and slipped out of the house quietly. The cold wind bit at my cheeks as I walked down the street, but it felt better than the suffocating tension inside. I reached the bus stop and sat down carefully, watching the sky darken. Cars rushed by, their headlights streaking across the pavement like fleeting ghosts. But one question sat heavily in my mind the entire ride. Why did my son make Michael promise to keep quiet? I got off near the cafe. It was an old place, faded red bricks, a flickering neon sign, and windows fogged from the warmth inside. I hesitated at the door, my hand hovering over the handle. What truth was waiting for me on the other side? Inside, the place smelled like old coffee and rain-soaked jackets. The lights were dim, casting long shadows across the empty tables. In the back corner, Michael sat hunched over a cup of coffee, his hands wrapped around it like he needed the warmth to steady his nerves. When he saw me, he stood quickly and pulled out the chair across from him. "You came," he whispered. "Of course," I said softly. "Now tell me, what do you know?" He looked over his shoulder, making sure no one was listening. Then he leaned forward, his voice trembling. "Your son didn't die the way she said he did." My heart stopped. The room spun. What do you mean?" I whispered. Michael swallowed hard. His eyes were full of something I had seen only once before. The day he and my son went to war together. Fear. "She lied," he whispered. "About everything." My hands gripped the edge of the table. "Michael, tell me the truth. All of it." He took a slow breath, lowered his voice even more, and said something that made the entire world tilt beneath me. "Your son knew he wasn't going to make it home. And he told me, if anything happened to him, to protect a secret about her." "What secret?" Michael's face darkened. "She wasn't who he thought she was." He looked me in the eyes. "She was living a double life." And right then the cafe door opened. Cold air rushed in. And my daughter-in-law walked inside. Her eyes locked on me. The moment she walked into that cafe, the air changed. It was like every molecule in the room froze. I felt it in my bones, that silent danger that only a mother's instinct can sense. She didn't say a word at first. She just stood there in the doorway, her dark coat wrapped tightly around her, her eyes slicing through the room until they landed on me. I didn't blink. I didn't move. Neither did Michael. Her heels clicked slowly across the tile floor as she approached our table. Each step sounded like a warning. When she stopped in front of us, her lips curved into a smile, the kind that wasn't actually a smile at all. It was the kind a wolf gives when it's tired of pretending to be harmless. "Well," she said softly, "isn't this cozy?" Michael's hand tightened around his coffee cup. I could see the muscles in his jaw clench. He wasn't scared for himself, he was scared for me. "You followed me," I said quietly. "Of course I did," she replied. "Did you really think I'd let you wander around town on today of all days?" There was something in her voice, something cold, sharp, metallic, a tone that didn't belong to a grieving widow. It belonged to someone who had something to protect. She pulled out a chair and sat down across from me, crossing her legs slowly like she had all the time in the world. She glanced at Michael with a look that made him drop his gaze instantly. "You two seem deep in conversation," she said. "Must be important." Michael lifted his head and looked at me, waiting, silently begging for direction. I placed a hand on the table to steady myself. "It was," I said. Her smile widened. "Oh? About what?" "My son," I answered. "The man we buried today. Remember him?" Her expression flickered for half a second, a tightening around the eyes, then she leaned back in her chair, pretending to be unfazed. "Of course. But I don't think he'd want you digging through the past on the day we said goodbye." "That's exactly why I'm digging," I whispered. Something in my voice must have surprised her, because her posture stiffened slightly. She wasn't used to me pushing back. Michael cleared his throat quietly. "Maybe we should all go somewhere private." "No." She cut him off sharply, her eyes burning into him. "You don't talk to her about him. Do you understand?" Michael swallowed. "I was just... Do you understand?" she repeated, her tone rising just enough to make the few customers in the cafe glance our way. My blood boiled. "Don't speak to him like that," I said. She turned to me slowly, her expression shifting into something darker. "He doesn't have the right to talk about my husband. And I don't have the right to stay in my son's home?" I pushed. Her jaw tightened. "I already told you." "Yes," I interrupted softly. "You told me to pack my things. You told me to leave. You told me to stop crying at my child's funeral. And now you're following me to cafes? Why?" "There." Crack. Tiny one, but it was there. Her eyes flickered. Her heartbeat seemed to jump in her throat. "Why are you so afraid of me talking to Michael?" I asked calmly. She laughed under her breath. A brittle, hollow laugh. "Afraid?" she repeated. "I'm not afraid of anything." But fear was written all over her. Michael leaned in slightly. "She deserves to know," he whispered. Her head snapped toward him. "Don't you dare." He didn't back away this time. "You think I'm scared of you," he said. "After everything I've seen? After everything he told me?" Her face paled. It was like someone had yanked the ground out from under her. Her hands tightened around her purse, knuckles turning white. "He told you lies," she said, her voice trembling ever so slightly. "He told me the truth," Michael shot back. She stood up abruptly, her chair screeching across the floor. Everyone in the cafe looked over. Her chest was rising and falling too fast, like she was drowning in her own panic. "You're coming home," she said to me. "Now." "No," I replied, my voice steady. "I'm not." Her eyes darkened. "You don't get to say no." "Yes," I whispered, "I do." The moment felt heavy, like the whole room was holding its breath. She leaned down, placing her hands on the table, her face inches from mine. "You don't understand what you're doing," she hissed. "You don't understand what he asked me to protect." My heart skipped. "What did my son ask you to protect?" I whispered. She froze. Her eyes widened just a fraction, like she realized she'd said too much. Michael stood abruptly. "That's enough," he said. She stepped back, shaking her head. "You have no idea," she whispered. "No idea what you're about to uncover." "Yes," I said softly. "Which is why you're terrified." She turned away sharply, storming toward the door. But before she left the cafe, she looked back at me, and something in her expression made chills crawl down my spine. It wasn't anger. It wasn't grief. It wasn't even hate. It was fear. Real fear. She pushed the door open and disappeared into the night. Michael exhaled shakily and sank back into his seat. "She knows," he whispered. "She knows I was going to tell you." "Then tell me now," I said. He looked at the door, then at me, then at the table, like he was weighing something heavy, something dangerous. "It started 2 years ago," he said quietly. "Before they got married." I leaned forward, every nerve in my body on edge. She wasn't who she claimed to be. She wasn't even using her real name back then. My heart dropped. "What do you mean, real name?" I managed to say. Michael swallowed hard. She changed her identity before your son met her. And not because she wanted a fresh start. Then why? He looked me straight in the eyes. Because she was running from something. A cold shiver crept down my spine. Running from what? Michael whispered the words slowly, like they were too heavy to speak aloud. A crime. My breath stopped. She lied to your son, he continued. She lied to everyone. And he found out. I stared at him, unable to speak. And the day he planned to tell you. Michael's voice cracked. What happened? I whispered. He closed his eyes. That's the day he died. The room blurred around me. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. The truth slammed into me, brutal, undeniable. My son didn't die in an accident. He died after discovering who she really was. And she knew. She knew he found out. And now she knew I was next. My dear. I still remember how that night felt. Cold. Hollow. Like the walls themselves were listening. I sat on my son's old couch, the same spot where he used to fall asleep watching late-night sports when he was just a tired teenager pretending he wasn't. My hands trembled as I held that small wooden box I'd found hidden beneath the floorboard. The box that shouldn't have been there. The box that somehow felt heavier than truth itself. For a long while I just stared at it. My breath short, my heart loud, and my mind running in circles I couldn't escape. I kept wondering, why did my son hide something from me? What was he so afraid of? And then, God forgive me, I wondered if Sandra knew. If she held the answers while she stood in that funeral room telling me to pack my bags. I felt myself shaking and I whispered to the empty room. Baby, what did you leave behind for me? When I finally opened the lid, something inside me froze. There were only 3 things. 3 small, ordinary-looking objects that somehow felt like clues in a story I didn't know I'd been living inside. The first was an old birthday card. The one I gave him when he turned 9. His messy little handwriting on it said, "Thank you for never giving up on me, Mom." My throat tightened. The second was a folded photograph. A picture of him standing beside a woman I didn't recognize, both smiling, sunlight in their eyes. I felt a strange ache rise in my chest because he looked happy. Truly happy. Happier than I'd seen him in years. Happier than he ever looked with Sandra. But it was the third object that made me stop breathing. A tiny flash drive. Just a plain black flash drive. No label. No scratches. Nothing to suggest what dark storm lived inside it. I held it so tightly that my fingers went white. Every instinct in me screamed, don't plug it in. But every motherly instinct whispered, you owe him the truth. You owe your son everything. So instead I looked up at the ceiling and said, Lord, give me strength. And maybe he did. Because I stood up, walked toward my son's old desk and set the flash drive down. But I didn't open it. Not yet. Some truths, they ask you to breathe before they break you. I sat back down and pressed my palm against my chest to slow my heartbeat. My thoughts kept twisting back to Sandra, and the way she told me to leave that funeral as if she'd been waiting for that moment. As if my grief inconvenienced her. As if she needed me gone. But why? What was she hiding from me? And then the question that haunted me the most slipped back into my mind. If my son trusted me enough to hide this box in my bedroom wall, what secret was he protecting me from? That thought felt like a nail pressing through my ribs. I reached for the photograph again, studying the woman beside him. She didn't look like a threat. She had soft, kind eyes. A warm smile. She looked like someone who saw my son, truly saw him. Not like someone who took from him. Not like someone who ordered his grieving mother to pack her bags at his funeral. For a moment, bitterness rose in me like a tide. But I pushed it down. I couldn't let anger speak for me. Not yet. I pressed the photograph against my heart and closed my eyes. Oh, sweetheart, I whispered. Who were you trying to protect? The house creaked softly, the kind of lonely sound old houses make when they remember too much. And maybe I was imagining it, but I felt like the air changed. As if someone had walked through the room. As if my son's presence lingered, waiting for me to uncover the truth he couldn't tell me himself. I took a slow breath and finally stood up again. I knew I couldn't hide from the flash drive forever. I knew whatever waited inside was going to change everything. The funeral, Sandra, the fights they had, the sudden way he distanced himself from me, the way she'd controlled everything, even after he died. My hands hovered above the laptop. And then like lightning something struck me. Why had Sandra insisted I leave right after the funeral? Why had she said it with such urgency, almost panic? Why did she want me gone before I could even step inside my son's house? My breath caught in my throat. My hand shook so violently I had to steady it against the desk. Unless she knew something was here. Unless she was afraid I'd discover it. Unless she had been guarding this house not out of grief but out of fear. A sudden chill ran up my spine. I looked around the room, feeling watched even though I knew no one was there. The quiet felt different now, sharp, heavy, dangerous. Like something had been disturbed. Like Sandra might return at any moment. And that's when another thought hit me so hard it nearly took my breath away. If Sandra didn't want me here. If she wanted me gone before I found this box. If she looked at me with something closer to guilt than hatred. Then what exactly was she hiding about my son's death? What if everything I believed was wrong? My knees almost buckled beneath me. I looked back at the flash drive and tears filled my eyes. Not soft tears, but the kind that come from fear, betrayal, and love all tangled together. I whispered, "Baby, what did they do to you?" Before I could talk myself out of it, I plugged the flash drive in. My heart pounded as the screen blinked. One folder appeared. Just one. Labeled with a single word that tore through me like a blade. Truth. I placed my hand over my mouth as tears spilled down my face. My whole body trembled, my breath came fast, and I felt the truth standing right behind me like a shadow waiting to swallow the light. The moment I clicked that folder, my entire world began to crack. 'Cause inside it, inside that single quiet folder, were recordings. Dozens of them. Recordings of my son. Crying, confessing, whispering things he should have never had to say alone. Recordings that would reveal why Sandra feared me knowing the truth. Recordings that would change the story of his death forever. And as the first one began to play, my heart stopped completely. My darling, when that first recording began, it felt like the whole world tilted. I swear even the air inside the room changed, thick, tight, trembling. Almost as if the house itself braced for what I was about to hear. I clutched the sides of the chair, afraid my heart might stop beating right then. And the moment my son's voice came through the speakers, soft and tired and broken, I felt every bone inside me turn to glass. He whispered, "Mom, I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending everything's fine." My lips parted, but nothing came out. I hadn't heard his voice in months, not like that. Not that raw. Not that scared. He kept talking, his breathing shaky. "If you're hearing this, it means I couldn't hold on anymore. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I pressed my hand to my mouth as tears streamed down my cheeks. I wanted to scream. I wanted to take his face in my hands and tell him, "Baby, you weren't supposed to handle this alone." But all I could do was listen as my son spoke into the dark, leaving pieces of his soul for a mother he hoped would someday understand. Then his voice cracked. "She doesn't let me leave the house without checking my phone. She won't let me talk to you. She says you're trying to turn me against her. Mom, she hides my keys. She goes through my things. She threatens me when she thinks I'm lying." My blood ran cold. My fingers shook so badly I almost knocked the laptop off the desk. I stared at the screen, frozen, unable to breathe. The room felt like it was spinning. He whispered again, this time with the kind of fear I prayed I would never hear from my child. "I think she's watching me right now." My heart cracked so loudly it felt like the sound echoed through the house. He kept talking, voice trembling. "If I disappear, don't trust her. Please, Mom. Don't believe anything she says." I gasped out loud. That moment, that exact sentence burned itself into my heart like a brand. I remember gripping the arm of the chair, nails digging into the fabric, whispering, "My baby, what did she do to you?" The recording ended abruptly, leaving the room in a terrifying silence. A silence that swallowed me whole. I wiped my tears with shaking hands and clicked the next audio file. This time I heard footsteps, his footsteps pacing back and forth. Then his voice again, low and panicked. "She took my bank cards. She said I don't deserve money if I can't behave. She keeps telling me she'll ruin my life if I tell anyone." My breath hitched. I felt like I was sitting inside a nightmare, one I never saw coming. My sweet boy, the child I raised with every ounce of love I had been trapped inside the walls of his own home while I stood outside, powerless, clueless, believing everything was normal. He spoke again. "Mom, She said she'll tell everyone I'm dangerous, that I'm unstable. She knows what lies to use. She knows how to twist the truth. I closed my eyes, my heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted to break free from my chest. He whispered one last thing before the recording ended, and it nearly stopped my heart. Mom, if anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. I dropped my face into my hands and sobbed. Not gently, not quietly, the kind of crying that claws its way out of your throat because the truth is too heavy, too cruel, too unbearable. I don't know how long I cried. Minutes. Hours. Grief has no clock. But at some point, I wiped my tears and forced myself to keep going. I clicked the next recording. This one was shorter. Just 8 seconds. His voice was barely audible. Mom, she's coming. Then silence. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling, trying not to collapse. My lungs refused to work properly. My fingers went numb. My mind spiraled with 1,000 questions I couldn't answer. Why didn't he call me? Why didn't he run? Why didn't I push harder when he stopped visiting? Why didn't I feel something was wrong? Guilt is a vicious animal, darling. It tears you apart from the inside piece by piece, until all that's left is a mother begging for a second chance she'll never get. I wiped my face again, steadied my breathing, and clicked the 4th recording. This one was different. He sounded calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that made my stomach twist into knots. Mom, I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't say it more. I covered my mouth to hold in the scream building inside me. He continued softly. If she tells you I hurt myself, don't believe her. If she tells you I was depressed, don't believe her. If she tells you anything that doesn't feel like me, don't believe her. My whole body trembled. He whispered the last sentence like it cost him everything he had left. She said she'd rather see me gone than let me leave. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Gone. He said gone. Not hurt. Not injured. Gone. I felt a chill move through me, cold and sharp as winter wind. Because suddenly the funeral felt different. The way she rushed everything. The way she refused to let me see him alone. The way she controlled every detail. The way she forced me out of the house like I was a threat. It all made sense now. Terrifying sense. I looked at the flash drive, my hands shaking so badly I had to hold my wrists to steady them. Then, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just a grieving mother anymore. I was a mother on fire. A mother who'd been lied to. A mother who'd been pushed aside. A mother whose son had begged for help in secret recordings, because he knew the person he lived with was capable of destroying him. And she thought I'd walk away quietly. She thought I was weak. She thought I wouldn't fight. But she forgot one thing. She forgot whose mother I am. I closed the laptop slowly, wiped the tears from my cheeks and whispered into the empty house. Baby, I'm going to get you justice. I don't care what it costs me. 'Cause now, I had evidence. I had truth. I had everything she was terrified I'd find. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. My dear. The moment I closed that laptop, something inside me changed forever. I wasn't just heartbroken anymore. I wasn't just a grieving mother sitting alone in a quiet house full of memories. No, I became something stronger. Something sharper. Something a woman becomes only when someone threatens the life she gave to this world. I became a mother with nothing left to lose. I tucked the flash drive into my pocket and took a long, shaky breath. My hands still trembled, but not from fear anymore. God knows I had enough of that. Now it was anger. A quiet, cold anger that settled deep in my bones, giving me strength I didn't know I still had. I whispered to the dark room, Baby, I promise this isn't the end of your story. And then I stood up. For the first time since his funeral, I felt steady. Not healed. Not okay. But steady enough to fight. My plan was simple. Take the recordings to the police, force a reinvestigation, make them look at what really happened. Sandra wouldn't be able to hide anymore. The lies she used to bury my son would turn to dust the moment those officers heard his voice begging for help. But life has a cruel way of testing you right when you think you're ready. Because as I reached the front door, I heard tires on gravel. A car. Stopping. Right outside the house. I froze. Through the window, headlights cut across the yard like twin blades of white fire. My pulse spiked. I stepped back from the door and held my breath. I didn't need to guess who it was. Call it mother's instinct or maybe the recording still echoing through my mind, but I knew. It was her. Sandra. I moved quietly through the house, keeping to the shadows. My heart slammed against my ribs as I watched her silhouette step out of the car. Slow, confident, like someone who believed she owned the night. She looked up at the house and even from inside I felt the chill go through me. She wasn't here to mourn. She wasn't here to check on the house. She was here because she thought I found something. And she couldn't let me leave with it. My breath caught when she raised her hand holding a spare key. My son once told me she insisted on having keys to every place he ever lived. Controlling, he'd said. It makes her feel powerful. At the time I laughed it off. Now the memory cut through me like a blade. She unlocked the door. I backed away from the entry hallway, gripping the flash drive in my pocket so tightly it dug into my palm. The door creaked open. She stepped inside. And the first thing she whispered wasn't my name. It wasn't hello. It wasn't even anger. It was fear. Where are you? Her voice shook. I don't know why, but that terrified me more than if she'd come in screaming. Because a guilty person screams. A guilty person blames. But a person who's afraid of being caught whispers. I stayed hidden in the hallway's dark corner. My heart hammered. She closed the door softly behind her, like she didn't want the world to know she was here. She moved through the house, her steps careful. I pressed myself against the wall as she walked toward the living room, the place where the laptop sat. The moment she saw it open, she froze. Then she whispered to herself, "No, no, no, no." She didn't find it. She grabbed the laptop with shaking hands and started clicking, frantic. I could see the panic from across the room. It was written in every movement, every breath she took. She tried to open the recording folder. Except I had removed the flash drive. The computer showed an error. Her entire body stiffened. Her hands flew to her mouth. She whispered, "Dear God, where is it?" And that's when it hit me like a punch to the chest. She wasn't scared of me. She was scared of the truth. I stepped out of the shadows. She spun around, eyes wide, face pale, breathing sharp and fast. The moment she saw me, she knew. "You listened," she whispered. I nodded. My voice came out steady, stronger than I felt. I heard everything. Her face crumpled, not in sadness, not in regret, but in raw, desperate fear. She took a step toward me. "Give it to me." I shook my head slowly. "No." She took another step, more aggressive this time. "It's mine." "No," I whispered. "It was his." She clenched her fists. Her mask of control cracked right in front of me. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I cut in. My voice shook, but not from weakness. "You hurt my son. And you were terrified people might find out." She stared at me like she wanted to scream, but her voice only came out in a trembling whisper. "He wasn't supposed to. Say the truth," I demanded. She shook her head violently. Tears filled her eyes, real or fake I couldn't tell. "He was leaving me. He said he was leaving. He had someone else. He was going to ruin everything." My mouth fell open. The woman in the photograph. The happiness in his smile. She whispered, almost choking. "He said he didn't love me anymore." My voice cracked. "So what did you do?" Her silence was louder than a confession. My fingers tightened around the flash drive in my pocket. My entire body shook. "My son, my sweet boy. He died in a house where the person beside him held his life like a fragile thing she could crush if she wanted." I stepped back. "I'm going to the police." Her eyes widened. For a moment, I swear she thought about lunging at me. But she didn't. Maybe she finally understood something. Mothers don't lose. Not when it comes to their children. Not even when their child is gone. I walked to the door slowly. She didn't follow. She didn't speak. She didn't breathe. I stepped outside into the cold night air, clutching the flash drive to my chest, whispering softly into the darkness. "Baby, Mama's here. I'm not done fighting." And as I closed the door behind me, walking toward the headlights of justice waiting beyond the street, I felt him, my son, right beside me, finally free.